Please come in, make yourself comfortable, sit down, closer to the stage. We will start soon. Give people a few minutes to move from a very interesting conversations they have downstairs with coffee and interesting desserts. I hope the room to be fuller than this. But please keep the door open so people can come in. I've been recruiting people all along, like ballroom A, the best. So thank you for coming and joining us. We will start shortly. In a couple of minutes, let people settle in, sit down, talk to your colleagues at the table. It's a time to say hello, because later on you will all have to work on a challenge together. Better set up your team, find your alliance and partners now. Dodo, please come to the table over here. We will start soon. The IT team, everything is ready. Recording on? Okay. So welcome everyone to our section, Unlocking Synergies, Health Tech and AI at the Climate and Health Frontier. And my name is Tuba Huing, and I'm from FHI 360. I'm also a member of the organizing committee for PMAC. So it's very nice to see a lot of our IOC members here to support me, but also lots of new colleagues and friends all over the world. It is a privilege for me to guide the conversation today, but let me start with a confession. I'm not an AI expert, and there are many of you in the room. In fact, a few days ago, I had a conversation with one of our speakers, Carlos. You will meet him later. And he said, "Oh, Tuba, have you heard about the earthquake?" And I'm like, I'm a climate scientist, so of course I'm in an emergency response mode. And I'm like, earthquake? Where? In the Pacific? And he's like, well, it's actually what he was referring to is not the tectonic plate shift, but it's the VIDIA's seismic shift of losing $600 billion in the market value, right? With DeepSeek and all that. And I'm like, what, really? Okay, let me read. So just to set the record straight, I'm not an AI expert, but I promise you the most lively, engaging, hopefully educational section in PMAC 2025. Don't tell my friends that though. But okay, so as we heard in the throughout PMAC and also through the year and also at Davos, there's no shortage of AI conversations, and even AI conversations with climate growing more and more. I hear more about it. But so why this session? So as you will hear, this session actually deals with a bigger framing and thinking about AI. Here we deal with the twin crisis of climate change and global health. So is AI a game changer? Is it going to supercharge our actions of the climate and health nexus? So in the next 2 hours, we will tackle these questions head on. We brought together experts from academia, the private sector, multilateral institutions, and philanthropy to share their insights on the AI's role in climate and health. We will explore not only the opportunities, but also the tough questions. Can AI truly deliver its promise, or are we just chasing novelty over impact? So let's dive into it. Let me start to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Sarah Khalid, Associate Professor at the University of Oxford. She heads the Planetary Health Informatics Group at the Center for Statistics in Medicine and Machine Learning and Big Data team. Sarah has spent over a decade pushing the boundaries of AI and data science. Sarah, welcome. So, Sarah, can you give an overview of some of the potentials and pitfalls of digital technologies in global health challenges in the face of an evolving climate. Sarah will talk for 10 minutes and then we will start with other speakers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Thupa. And it is indeed a pleasure to be here all the way from Oxford. And Swadika, I'm getting to practice some Thai as well. I also have a disclaimer. I must say at the outset that I can take very little credit for what is ongoing work by many colleagues in the field of health AI. And I'm just today the lucky person who has been invited by PMAC and FHI to present what is going to be a very, very bird's eye view on some of the potentials and some of the pitfalls, with the idea being that it will hopefully foster some of the conversations that we'll see later today. So, and you'll have noticed that there's AI in the title, but if you'll all allow me, I prefer to refer to the more broader field of health informatics or digital health, including but not limited to AI, which is, I'm sure we all agree by now, a bit of a catch-all phrase anyways. So to begin with, just to set the scene, because we're talking a little bit about climate and health and planetary health, which is in short defined as the impact of human-induced planetary changes on human health itself. Let's just briefly recap this image of climate change. Now, we've all seen these images that basically were behind the Paris Agreement of 2015, where for the first time world leaders came together to set the goal of limiting global warming to 2 degrees. So we're not going to go through the climate science and the politics, but we know that as we stand today, the world is warming up to 1.2 degrees compared with pre-industrial levels. Relevant is that it is already resulting in profound, immediate, and rapidly worsening health impacts with real human cost. So with that as the backdrop, diving straight into some of these health impacts. So colleagues at the London School who led one of the first Lancet Commission reports showed nicely here some of the impacts can be direct, such as hospitalizations, injury, and mortality. Indirect ones such as diet and lifestyle related ones, and even downstream impacts from, for example, climate-induced or exacerbated conflict and migration and so on. I mean, I do want to emphasize here that the actual chain on cause and effect is often extremely complex and it depends on multifactorial factors such as socio-demographics and so on. So it's an intersectional problem, not just limited to climate change itself. But all in all, it is a global problem affecting every continent and from now on every generation. So what does that have to do with tech and AI? So that brings us straight to the role of health technology in general and AI. And that in some ways can be thought of largely in terms of 3 areas. So the first is, and as we've been hearing throughout the conference, the importance of data. So generating data, good data. So one of the positives of technological advancements in recent decades is that today, and I hope some of you, at least some of you will agree with me, there's no shortage of data sources. From personal level all the way through to atmospheric level, thanks to Earth observation tech. So, but the challenge is bringing these sometimes disparate and undemocratic data sources together in a standardized manner, in a regulated manner. Second is the extracting of useful information or knowledge from these data. So, and that can lead to rapid, representative, data-driven analytics to offer the potential for informing policy and practice change in real time. So there is that potential, but how is the question. And third, and perhaps most critical and pressing in the context of climate adaptation, is that of adapting entire health care systems to a rapidly changing environment. So in terms of adaptation mechanisms, just to showcase a couple of examples that we are aware are either emerging or in deployment, one key area is early warning systems. So traditionally, early warning systems for things like floods and droughts would be based on general knowledge, on local general knowledge, experience, and word of mouth. More recently, through AI, big data, and high-performance compute, which are three key components of advanced analytics. The so-called intelligent early warning systems can potentially provide advanced warning of extreme weather events. And such systems, for example, for heat, are in place in several places such as Shanghai, some European cities, and Philadelphia. And there are other systems that are emerging. I'm sure we'll hear about that later on as well. And the same story is true for flood prediction, where, for instance, machine learning models developed by researchers at Google are supporting local knowledge to provide monsoon warnings in places like India and Bangladesh. Prediction of disease outbreaks is another area where informatics has been involved. We're going to again hear more about this from Nobu, but this is just some work done by NASA recently, modeling Earth observation from the Landsat series of satellites on the left to predict malaria outbreaks in Peru. And on the right is a similar approach that we took in our lab to predict malaria outbreaks in South Asia, so India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh, by analyzing a combination of human and environmental activity indicators. The idea is always the same, is to predict cases months ahead of the peak in order to give national control programs time to increase and ramp up control measures. Now, a little bit on a tangent, but thinking more broadly about the planetary ecosystem, here's some work done with Virginia Tech to support a marine conservation fun exercise expedition in the Hawaii Islands. And it's a beautiful illustration in some ways of where AI has known to be at its best. So detecting patterns that we can't with our naked eye. And actually, this is the actually linchpin of AI, which has led to its success mostly in the realm of medical diagnostics if you compare all of healthcare. So identify new and known species of shark, in this case, so wildlife monitoring. So a little bit of a broader view. But beyond these direct applications, informatics is driving some of the modeling to plan for the future, such as cooler cities, etc. The climate change and AI community have published recommendations around this for those who may be interested to look into this a little bit more. So lots of open areas and opportunities, and as with everything, AI has its own carbon cost, and a significant one at that. We know by some estimates that 3%, up to 3% of the world's energy consumption right now is due to AI and data centers. And that's fast outpacing industries like aviation. So that does necessitate real and urgent moves toward both responsible and green AI. Probably people are thinking DeepSeek at this point, but so far what we know is that DeepSeek, as with all other AI, is following Moore's law. So the chips are getting smaller and smarter, but is it getting closer to sustainability? That's still an open question. So some challenges with data itself, circling back to data. I've just listed some out here because I know that in the panel discussion that's to follow, a lot of this is going to come up, such as fairness, and we heard a lot about this in the conference already as well, governance, regulation, privacy. But let's just look at just one example around health data poverty. So if underlying data are not representative of affected populations, or there's bias in algorithmic processes, resulting AI tools, in effect, can be baked in bias and lead to healthcare providers to potentially misestimate real people's real health risks. And we've seen this in a plethora of clinical risk prediction algorithms. And this can, in turn, exacerbate underlying systemic inequities in a sort of a vicious cycle. So in some work that we did in the UK, looked at 60 million health records just to understand who is represented by routine health data, real-world health data. And it shows that better democratized data can offer the potential to lead to at least less biased AI tools, and ultimately, in some way, better health for all. So in theory, data from anywhere in the world can be mined in the same way. But the reality is that given the heterogeneous and sensitive nature of real-world individual level, if not patient level data emerging from different parts of the world, that requires a modeling of, poses certain modeling challenges, like looking at robust governance and privacy preservation frameworks such as federated distributed analytics. So one example here on the screen is that of the OMOP Common Data Model. which allows for multi-site data sharing and studies without patient-level data sharing in the first instance. So frameworks such as these have been shown to offer promise going forwards, and there's a real opportunity to bring together data from different parts of the world in a way not done before, and in volumes, in varieties not seen before. And that leads me to a final nuance that I want to open up for now, and that is the idea of capturing and linking multimodality or wide information at individual level, which makes the task of data linkage even more complex and challenging, given all of the factors raised so far. And this is one of the areas that we are looking at the Planetary Health Informatics Lab through standardized linkage of large-scale health and exposome data with foundation models and so on. But this is very much an emerging field. It is, if you ask me, one of the keys to large-scale climate and health analytics. I've heard from many colleagues, of course, the climate community and the health community working in silos. So something like this offers an opportunity to bring the scientist community together from these two areas. And the idea is obviously to inform practice and policy making for health outcomes and resource allocation. So there are several initiatives around the world for those who want to dip their toes to leverage large-scale infrastructure that is being developed around the world for these planetary health solutions. So that's a bit of a whistle-stop tour. Many questions still remains. Just a question about superintelligence has not been looked at so far. And for example, the issues around regulation and whether there should be an international AI watchdog around healthcare. Can AI accelerate climate modeling, and can it become sustainable quickly enough and regulated quickly enough? So are there any cost-benefit analysis done around this? So this and more questions, I think at this point, then we have answers. But hopefully this provides some fodder for the rest of the conversation. And with that, I think I want to hand back to Thuba to introduce the rest of the panel. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Sarah. And we have a full room. Fantastic. Thank you. And as we heard a lot in over the past couple of days, when we talk about climate and data, people think, oh, early warning, malaria, dengue. But I really like that example of the biodiversity one, because we need to think about ecosystems, urban planning, air pollution, energy, transport. It's so many sectors as well, which we won't be able to go into today, but we'll tease out some of the key questions that Sarah just mentioned. And now let me introduce the format of today. We just heard from Sarah giving us an overview. Now we have another 5 panelists, and each of them will speak for 5 minutes. We will stop in the middle for interacting with the audience, so do prepare your questions as we go along. I will stop when the 3rd speaker finished, and then we can have a Q&A. Then we continue with the last 3 speakers who are dealing more with investment, futures, policies, research, and then we stop for your questions as well. So then that will end our first section, the panel discussion. And then follow up, there'll be 20 minutes, hopefully. Everyone will stick to the time, so we can have the last 20 minutes to do a scenario challenge. And it's not a big challenge, so don't be scared. It's just a challenge, but it's more like an opportunity for all of you to engage with our speakers, ask more questions, and work on an exercise together. It's more like team building sort of things. And they will be the advisors at your table, and you will come up with a solution and pitch to us. Only one solution at the table, so we have 6 tables. So that's the structure of today's session. Now I would like to invite our next speaker, Dr. Tuấn Nguyễn is a medical epidemiologist and global health expert at FHI's 360. He has provided tech support and conducted research studies in 20 countries. He's also an associate editor of the International Breastfeeding Journal and stakeholder group for Global Nutrition Report 2024. Tuấn, please take the stage. So I was with Tuấn in COP28. For those who are not familiar with the COP meeting, who knows about COP, the UNFCCC COP? Oh, 10% in the room. So Conference of the Party organized by UNFCCC. It's the largest climate change conference. 190 something countries and state leaders coming to discuss climate. So COP28 2 years ago was in Dubai, and Tuấn actually surprised Dr. Tedros with his green feeding climate action tool, which he will share with us today. So Tuấn, the connection, and I bet, I mean, this is not just for me, when Tuấn mentioned to me about breastfeeding, commercial milk, climate actions, and I'm like, breastfeeding? Okay, so, you know, acknowledge my ignorance, but this, I think, been overlooked both by climate and nutrition and health sectors. So how did your program, Alive and Thrive, identify this critical intersection between nutrition and climate change, and maybe give us a few examples in different regions of where you have applied your tool?
Yes, so thank you very much, Tuba, and really amazing to see that all the room is full with participants, and that's make me also nervous. But let me start by telling us a real story, my real story. So I graduated from medical school back to 1995. That's 30 years ago, and at that time there no I'm pediatrician, but there's no chance to get a job in the hospital. So many of us need to go to other sectors, and for me, I go to public health. So in one of the, so at that time, you know, that's in 1990s, the movement for genders are all over the world. So I attended training because I conducted a study about the gender and malnutrition in children. So I attended training, and in the training, they also have a scenario. They show a picture of the women, and they said that the interviewer come and ask, what do you do? So she says, I do nothing. But then people said, so who are the one to collect the wood? She said, I am. And who are the one who collect the water? So I am. So I want to take care of the children. I am. So, but the women themselves didn't really realize that's the work. And people don't really recognize that's the work, that's the contribution of the women to the society. So we think that if the thing is not measured, if the thing is not reported, it will be not considered its contribution. So actually, that's the key motivation for the whole team. That's for us to develop the green feeding tool and mother milk tool, and the cost of not breastfeeding. So let give another, going back to the example to show. So if a farmer who raised a cow and using the milk to sell or give to the children, that will be count to GDP, or we call it food balance sheet. But if the same women who breastfed the children, a lot of great value from breastfeeding, but it was not count. So we think that is not fair comparison. So with that, we developed the tool. So for the cost of not breastfeeding tool, we see what be the potential contribution of the women, the breastfeeding to the health of the child, intellectual development. And then another one is the mother milk tool. Is that one we either quantify the contribution of the women through breastfeeding. And the last one is the environmental impact of breastfeeding. So it means that how many greenhouse gases that we could save. So going to the second. Oh, yeah. So relating to the green feeding tool, so we come up with, so we based on the data from WHO and UNICEF, that's and also like USAID, like the mix or DHS data. So using the data, our team have quantified using that data and quantify the potential breastfeeding pattern, and then estimate the potential milk that's needed. And then based on that, we estimate the cost for environment. So as you could see here in the picture, so actually commercial milk formula, if they didn't feed the children breastfeed milk, they will give infant formula. So you could see that's massive environmental impact of commercial milk formula. You could see here from the time they deforestation to have the farm, raising the cow, transport the raw milk to the factory, and then produce milk. That takes a lot of energy and water. And then the transportation to the retailer, and then to the family, and using the water and also energy for the use of milk. So next one, please. So the tool that we could show, another click, yeah. So the green feeding tool we show that in lower and middle income country alone. So we have like data from 80 countries in the world. So, and the use of commercial milk formula of children under 6 months only, and every year that will cause to the cost of around 6.0 to 7.5 billion kilogram of CO2 equivalent, and it's equivalent to 2 million cars running on the road every year. So with an assumption of 15,000 kilometers a year. And then that's required around more than 300 million trees to absorb every year. And if you go to like the water consumption, I try to make it, I use AI co-pilot to estimate the number. So that's maybe the number that's maybe very like relevant to you. So going back to the second question that Tuba asked about the use of that. So we could see like around 2 years ago, we could see a great opportunity to advocate for including breast milk as a part of food balance sheet. So to make it count. So we work very closely with experts from different organizations, including from FAO, to really promote for that. We are not very successful with that because they didn't put that in food balance sheet. But I have to say that we are successful to include around 2.5 pages in the report, the State of Food and Agriculture Report 2024 about our argument and about our tool. So hopefully you can be able to look at that at a later stage. Based on although we are not successful globally, we could see the potential for advocate that in Vietnam. And with all of the an argument and data that we have, we presented to Vietnam government. And actually, we are successfully include breast milk as a part of food balance sheet in Vietnam. So I have to say that's really amazing. And also want to talk about the data could be relevant to any of the country. So each of the country want to have the data that should be there. We have it, people could enter their own data. So for the country that doesn't have the data, the tool is web-based and is relevant to any different languages. Could be written by in any language, and they could have a dark mode or white mode. That's be relevant to the preference of people who are using. Yeah.
Thank you, Tuấn. And for those who joined our side event last week, we did have an action lab where you could try to use the tool and imagine a country where you don't have data and see how it works. And you can discuss policy implications of the data and such application of such a tool. So maybe later on at the table, if you are interested in the tool and hearing more, you can also talk to Tuấn. Can I actually invite the rest of the panelists to the stage? And then we can start the conversations, because I forgot that we can actually see the slides from here. So you can also see the screen. And then we can have a round of quick intro Carlos, you are here, and then Felipe, and then Dodo. Noboru, yes. So, yeah, we just, okay. Then now we can have a quick round of intro of the rest of the panelists, just their name and organizations, and then we'll move on to your questions where I can introduce you a little bit more. So Noboru, do you want to start? Everyone has your microphone on the seats, yeah. Yeah, just your name and organization.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Noboru Minakawa from Nagasaki University. I'm actually a mosquito scientist. I know you guys know mosquito also sensitive to the climate change. And also, I mainly work on the malaria in Africa.
Thank you. Thanks. Carlos?
I'm Carlos Escapa. I work at Amazon Web Services. I have a data and AI practice, and I am also a guest lecturer at Berkeley and ESADE in Barcelona, Spain.
Hello, good morning. My name is Felipe Colon. I work for the Wellcome Trust in the UK. I look after our portfolio on digital technologies for climate and health. And previous to Wellcome, I used to work as an academic on infectious disease modeling.
Thank you. Noboru, please give him a round of applause. He only arrived at the hotel today around 9 a.m. from Kenya.
Thank you. I got here this morning from Africa, Kenya actually. I still have a jet lag.
So fresh insights from the field, lots of stories to tell. So Noboru, you have been working in this space since the 90s. And I just imagining as a mosquito expert, like you run around the jungle and collect your data and write the notes, go back, enter into computer and run a bit of a spreadsheet sort of situation, Microsoft Excel. And, but nowadays, 30 years passed, and you just came back from the forest as well, or the community.
See my shoes, it's still dirty.
Evidence. But in 2023, there were 263 million new malaria cases, primarily in Africa, and even in places that we don't expect to see malaria, such as South Korea. With your experience and you see how the industry, the science evolves, could you share how AI, digital innovations have brought you hope or perhaps renew your excitement compared to those days that you have to enter data in Microsoft Excel spreadsheets?
Yeah, well, just briefly about my shoes, 2 days ago, I was actually, the forest, Kenya, the patch of the forest. I was walking with my students about 20 kilometers. So my legs very tired, also after sitting the long flight, Anyway, I started this work 30 years ago, as a medical entomologist, And that time, as a medical entomologist or ecologist, we use a lot of statistical analysis, tools and stuff, regressions mostly, Then I wrote, actually, no, I didn't write, I bought a book, showing a neural network, So the kind of new to me, then I read the book, that was kind of the base of the current, the machine learning techniques, So I used the neural network as a statistical analysis, as just a tool. I think to me, there's lots of AI talking here, AI, I don't know exactly what AI is, but I use machine learning, deep learning as a tool, just a part of the statistical analysis, But nowadays, those kind of more sophisticated tools are available. So I think there's hope that we can do many things, especially for the health, So that's what we did using those kind of tools to make models, to predict malaria outbreaks in South Africa.
So can we have the slides now? Do you want to share with us?
Okay, maybe I
part
can
of
show
your
you some
work?
slides, you know.
And
My legs.
you can sit down if you want.
No, that's okay.
And you have 4 minutes.
Okay, maybe I don't need this one, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so just I show you some our activities, you know, using machine learning, those kind of things, you know, predict the models, you know. Well, anyway, this is a local newspaper in Kenya. When I went to Kenya 30 years ago almost, that time a dry season, but every day the rain continues. Many people killed by the malaria and those kind of stuff, you know. So I was quite amazed, you know. That time that's called highland malaria, you know, the malaria epidemics occurred especially in the eastern part of Africa, you know. Then many people killed, 1997, 98, you know, that kind of things. Then this is the data showing the case data, especially, you know, 90s, you know, compared to 80s. So many outbreaks there, you know. So people are wondering why suddenly, you know, there are many cases, especially in the highland area. I know the people in the highland area, they have low immunities. You know, once the malaria spreads, you know, then the likelihood that they get killed is very high. You know. Then that time, you know, El Nino happened, huge El Nino in the Pacific Ocean. But you know, there's the suspicions, you know, the speculations, you know, maybe El Nino might cause those kind of outbreaks and stuff. But El Nino is events in the Pacific Ocean, far away from Africa. You know. Then we heard, you know, there's the similar events in the Indian Ocean. It's called Indian Ocean dipole mode, you know, more like an El Nino version of the Indian Ocean, you know. Then that year, the eastern part of the Indian Ocean, the water surface temperature higher than normal years, you know. Then that creates moistures, then hit the highland area in the eastern part of Africa, then dump the water. So I think directly, we pretty much confirm this one's affecting directly to the Africa rather than the El Nino. Of course, El Nino, Indian Ocean, they, you know, help, shouldn't say help, but they, you know, they interact with each other nowadays, you know. Okay, anyway, so we did some analysis and then we found out 90s there's some the variations in temperature and rainfalls and stuff, you know. Then there's lots of newspapers. Also, there's some papers studying about those climate events, climate variation and the malaria outbreaks in the eastern part of Africa. Then even the Rift Valley fevers and stuff. So we thought, you know, the climate change or climate variations, you know, we pretty much know now, you know, that cause those infectious diseases, especially mosquito-borne diseases, you know. Like I said, mosquitoes are very sensitive to climate change. So if you can predict the 3 months and 4 months before, then you can prepare for that, you know, stockpiling drugs and testing kits and stuff, you know. So that's we try to do these kind of things in South Africa, especially in the northern part of South Africa. So still malaria is endemic there. Then but we found out, you know, La Nina, you know, in the Pacific Ocean events affect South Africa, you know. When this happens, more rainfalls in the southern part of, not the Indian Ocean dipole mode, actually in this case. Then the help with the JICA, you know, we got some fundings, you know, they work with the South African friends, you know. Then we made first for the statistical analysis using time series analysis, but we also use the machine learning. This was almost 15 years ago, you know. Then we tried to predict, you know, actually we successfully predict the outbreaks in the 1990, sorry, this is wrong, 2017 outbreaks actually. The 6 months before in the dry season, you know. So then we provide the data information to the local agency so they could buy, you know, the testing kits and spray the insecticides, you know, before the season, you know, so they could prepare for that, you know. Then later on, we tried the deep learning models. We found out deep learning models a little bit better, especially long-term predictions. Statistical model is still good, that's cheap and very quick, Then especially short-term the prediction, like 3 months and 4 months, using the logs, especially Bayesian models, they're pretty good, Then machine learning is kind of intermediate. So then we are now applying to the dengues in Southeast Asia, even South America. I think I'm talking too much, I guess, Yeah. Well, thank you very much. This is a kind of introduction of study.
Thank you, Noburu. I think in the scenario challenge, we will dive a bit deeper into malaria and dengue, and people at the table can also interact with you and find out more about the work. But I just stop here for 5 minutes to let our audience ask any questions you have, any comments you have to our first 3 speakers, where I can take 2 questions for 5 minutes. Yes, can the room coordinator pass the microphone around? Or is there a microphone? Yeah, the lady there.
Hi, I'm Smeen Mirza. I'm with Access Health International, health policy think tank. I'm very interested in hearing about the breastfeeding work. I'm curious if it's led to any implementation changes on the ground in terms of women at work having better access to breastfeeding in offices, that kind of thing in Vietnam. Thank you.
Yes, so thank you very much for your question. So I have to say that since the time I joined FHI, that's back to 13 years, more than 13 years ago, we did at least movement toward the improvement of the right of the women and the right of the children, including the breastfeeding. So for in Vietnam, so that we in 2012 we are successfully support the government to change the law for the paid maternity leave from 4 months to 6 months, and after that we also have another policy for workplace lactation, so that we are ensure that the women have lactation room and also breastfeeding break. So usually in the many for us for women who after returning to work in the first year they could have they work only 7 hours, and so the remaining 1 hour is paid, and this was to support the express milk, or maybe some of them could go back to home to breastfeed the children. And also we do have a lot of movement toward the protection of the breast milk, including the bending of the advertisement law. So also in 2012, we successfully to expand the ban from promotion of infant formula from 12 months to up to 24 months. And we also work in different with other Asian countries, and you are actually Alive and Thrive. You're also a member of the ASEAN group, so we also provide our input to various kind of communication across the countries, including the breastfeeding, school feeding, many other aspects, as well. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes.
Have you ever considered allocating carbon credits for females who breastfeed?
Yeah, actually, that's really great question, and it's great to have a lot of donors here, and actually that's our next step. So, so when we talk about like the data, we only have 80 countries. Most of them are lower and middle income countries. So because they are the one who collect the information about breastfeeding. So for example, if you go to the tool and you search for America or maybe other developed country, we don't have the information. So I think that's our next step when we use the sales data. So the sales data is more likely to have in higher income country and some of middle income countries. So based on the sales data and with certain model that we could see what be the because not all of the sales go to the feeding. So we will have certain model to adjust for that. So for the next level of the model, we will be able to address the data gap in higher income countries. And for sure, like we will have add the carbon credit. However, the problem with that is this change with time and it change with different market. So the way that we want to do is we will have we plan to have a cell so that people could enter the value and then they could roughly estimate the volume. So we will not have automatically one to come up because even like different market have different price and upper and lower price. So they will let the user decide. Yeah. But that will be very. So the one that when we develop this tool, we really want to use that argument to support breastfeeding. Because as you could see, the infant formula production and consume a lot of energy, consume a lot of take a lot of carbon and water footprint. Yeah.
Thank you. Hold on to your questions because there's another round and also the speakers will sit at your table as well. Now let's change the conversations to a slightly different angle where we will talk more about investment, governance, and a kind of private sector's visions with AI in that climate and health nexus. So let me introduce our next speaker to my left, Carlos Capa. He has quite a resume, leading the global practice for data and AI at Amazon Web Services, building AI alliances at Meta, launching and existing startups, and also lecturing, as Carlos just mentioned before. Well, with a career like that, you think that he's powered by an AI himself. But let's keep it light today. It's a Saturday after all. So today, Carlos isn't here as the official voice from Amazon Web Services. He is a passionate member of the AI open source community, bringing his own insights and will add extra sparks to our conversations. So, Carlos, I have to say that I started using AI, ChatGPT, and all of that very early on, and I'm super excited about that. And when you read the news, there's some statistics, genuine potential about AI, reducing global greenhouse gas emission by 5 to 10%, significant. This is equivalent to the entire European Union's annual emissions. Sounds like a dream scenario. Of course, there's conversations about emission, as Sarah outlined, but then there's also the emergence of DeepSeek and the lower energy consumption. So I'd like to believe that energy and AI, that power couple, can really lead us to the net zero future. So that's what I was hoping and thinking. And then I talked to Carlos and things get complicated. So then tell me, is AI the true hero for our climate actions? And or are there other hidden trade-offs?
Wow, a tough question, right? It is neither a hero nor a villain, I would say. But what's very, very clear is that in the short term, AI is driving up the emissions. There's absolutely no doubt about that. If you look at the capital expenditures that are taking place among the big tech companies, they are monstrous amounts of money. This year, for instance, at Davos, Microsoft disclosed that they would be investing $100 billion in data center build-out. Last Friday, I believe it was, Facebook said that they were good for $65 billion to be invested in 2025. So, if you also take into account investments in China, you're probably talking about not far away from $500 billion that are going to be invested this year in data centers for AI. And the vast majority of that is going to be going into electricity, into cement, and into steel. So the embedded emissions of AI are absolutely huge. These projections of 5 to 10% reduction in carbon emissions, I really do not understand them. I don't know where they come from. To me, it feels a little bit like wishful thinking. But I don't think that there's any science that is actually supporting that. Now, well, like GHG is a very, very complex subject. These companies are not stupid. They are aware of the impact. All of them are measuring their CO2 emissions. Last year, for some of them, they went up, in some cases quite significantly. So they take steps to mitigate this through renewable energy credits. They try to procure renewable power where possible, but the fact is there's not enough of it. And they invest in AI ahead of the availability of that renewable energy. Therefore, if you actually look behind, for instance, Facebook's announcement, they're going to require about 2.3 gigawatts of power for just one new data center that they're putting in the northeast corner of Louisiana. If you correlate that with a press release from a company called Entergy, who is going to be the power supplier, they're going to build 3 new combined cycle reactors to power those data centers. So those reactors are basically going to run on methane. We don't call it methane, we call it natural gas, because there's a lot of euphemisms in our industry. So that's where we are. Now, what is the positive aspect here? As Minakawa-sensei exemplified, the availability of data allows us to use machine learning, and these techniques allow us to drive basically a massive amount of correlation with extremely large bodies of data. As a matter of fact, artificial intelligence is not intelligent, just to be clear. What it is highly developed correlative techniques that we use with a lot of compute power and a lot of storage. But there is nothing inherently similar to what happens in the human brain. And for instance, the fact that there is a correlation between the surface temperature in the Pacific and malaria in South Africa does not mean that there is a cause and effect. However, it can be very useful for scientists because it can guide somebody to find a lot faster a potential cause and effect between a phenomenon that is observed and it is picked up thanks to our ability to process a lot of data. So that is the hero part. We may be able to find ways to do things more efficiently thanks to the correlative power of artificial intelligence. And to complete my discourse today, the numbers are really so large that it is difficult to convey them. And for most of our citizens in the world, it's difficult for them to connect with what AI does. But just to give you an idea, DeepSeek, which is a lot in the news this week, they are reasoning models, so-called reasoning, by the way. I don't really believe they reason, but it looks like they reason. The memory size, just to give you an idea, is, if you will allow me to put a few numbers, 800 gigabytes, okay? A typical operating system, like Linux, for instance, is about 20. So there is like 40 times bigger. And an application, it will be probably single-digit gigabytes. So it's almost like injecting this beast that it is 1,000 times bigger into existing applications. Therefore, it is undoubtedly going to drive significant more electricity consumptions, and that's why there is such a massive build-out of data centers. And these data centers are having a very big impact locally. For instance, Ireland no longer allows new data centers because it's already up to, I believe, 25% of the electricity production of the country, and they had to make the decision, no more data centers. We need that electricity for other purposes. So this is part of the conundrum here. A lot of people feel very optimistic, myself included, about all the good things that we're going to be able to do with so-called AI or correlative science, if you want to be more precise, but there's definitely a price to pay on the CO2 emissions in the short term.
Thanks, Carlos. You're making me feeling a bit guilty. thinking about that voracious energy demands and the fact that I've been telling my children to turn off the lights when you leave the room, but everyone ChatGPT query is equal to 20 minutes of keeping the light bulb on. And so every time I turn it off, I'm like, oh, should I stop using ChatGPT instead? But yeah, great, thanks. Now, let's continue our conversations and have a bit of a different angle, looking at more like research and data. We have Felipe Gonzalez, who is a technology lead in the data science and the health team at Wellcome. Felipe has contributed to multiple IPCC intergovernmental panel of climate change, reports on vector-borne diseases, and very interesting, he authored a chapter in the climate book by Greta Thunberg. Welcome, Felipe. And now AI is rapidly transforming how we approach climate and health research, as we heard from our speakers on this side. Now, the Wellcome Trust is at the forefront of funding innovative digital tools in this space. But in our conversation a couple of days ago, you said we, human beings, often favor novelty over accuracy. Now, how is AI reshaping the way that the trust supports research? And how do you balance that excitement of cutting-edge AI solutions and the need for more rigorous evidence-based impact?
Thank you. First of all, thank you for the invitation to be here. It's a pleasure to be part of this panel. As the case of Sarah, I'd like to extend the conversation more towards digital technologies and not restrict it just to artificial intelligence. And as we know, digital technologies, including artificial intelligence or correlative science, are rapidly transforming the ways in which we are approaching climate and health research. And I think these innovations have tremendous potential to revolutionize our understanding of climate and health impacts and how we respond to these pressing challenges posed by climate change. And this is why just September last year, Wellcome announced an investment of about £45 million in a 5-year program to establish an evidence synthesis infrastructure collaborative alongside the UK Economic and Social Research Council. This ambitious initiative aims to leverage artificial intelligence methods to enable the real-time curation of scientific information to provide researchers, policymakers, and decision makers with the up-to-date information and evidence to drive change, not only in climate change, but climate change included. Digital technologies in general and AI in particular enable us to integrate disparate data sets like, for example, health information, climate information, environmental information that are normally collected at different spatiotemporal scales. It allows us to analyze more data than ever before, to model complex systems, and to monitor changes in the climate and the environment in near real time. And also allows us to do the same with our health. However, while we celebrate these advances, we must also be cautious. As I said in our conversations, we must remember that novelty should not shadow rigor. It is essential that funders like Wellcome ensure that the technologies we invest in are not only a promise in innovation, but also deliver robust results. One example where this is currently not happening effectively is climate services for health, like the development of early warning systems that we heard before. Despite substantial investments in climate infrastructure and services for early warning, for example, climate information is not used effectively to prevent and control health risks. There is a lack of integration of climate sciences in the health sector decision-making. And so climate-relevant outcomes like extreme heat resilience services pose significant risks of maladaptation because climate information is poorly understood by people in the health sector. And so actors in the health community need to seek the information and the guidance from people in the climate sector to use these data sets more effectively. This is why, once again, Welcome supports projects like the Harmonized project based at the Barcelona Supercomputing Center that aims to use cross-sectoral and transdisciplinary approaches to develop cost-effective and reproducible digital infrastructure and tools in different climate hotspots to drive changes, not only in policy, but also in practice. And that brings me to the importance of interdisciplinary collaboration. The challenges posed by climate change are multifaceted, and they are interconnected. To tackle these changes effectively and these risks effectively, we must break down silos. By bringing together experts from climate science, public health, data analytics, and other fields, like we did in a recent call where we funded attribution science for climate impacts on health, we are fostering comprehensive solutions that address the complexities of our world. Carlos highlighted that just because two things are correlated, that does not necessarily mean that they are a cause and effect, that there's no causality. So we are trying to build the evidence of causal effects of climate change on health by investing in this field. Just to give you an idea, over the past 25 years, there's only been 10 papers published in this matter. So there's only 10 papers that really attribute climate impacts on health. Now, finally, as we navigate the landscape of innovation, we must advocate for ethical standards, and as Carlos mentioned, the environmental cost of AI and technology at large. We must strive for transparency and accountability in our efforts so that the benefits of these technologies are shared among all the communities, especially those that have historically been marginalized. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Felipe. And so now we have research or applications. All we need is the bold investments and strategic financing to scale these solutions. And we have Dodo here with us. He's the director of the health practice team at the Asian Development Bank. He plays a key role in shaping the IDB's health policies, strategies, and operational plans in strengthened healthcare systems. Dodo, we had a conversation before, and this panel certainly is, as you've heard so far, we're not touching solutions because also Dodo believes that there are enough solutions, and how to turn these solutions into actions and implementation is key. So Dodo, how is AI changing the way IDB approaches climate and health investments? And what are the opportunities to leverage this for better implementation?
That's a good thing. As I just said to this meeting, this panel, I always thought that AI was science. Don't watch those movies out there. And for me, they're in a sense the worst nightmare you have. Now, like is about the heat. But nonetheless, I'm a very optimistic person. I do believe that those who are doing this investment in data centers will be very nice. So I trust Amazon and other companies to eventually bring up electricity. So for me as a sector person, I don't worry. I do believe that this increased emission now that's happening in the investment, all these server farms, all that, can be addressed, but you're not quite sure. What I really look into is how, in a sense, how AI can allow you to record the data startups. It's not providing us all of the information to make a lot of money. We talk about complex part of the device, but it's quite interesting that health was not in a top discussion until I. So, and now all of a sudden, in 2009, back we now have Kaufman Day was Health Day talk. So health is now part of all the health discussion. Why? Because if you've done enough studies, and in a sense, it's also driven by technology, more better access to data access and all that. And I think that's going to be the key part of how AI and technology will help us. Climate and health interaction is a very difficult thing for health ministries to understand. And the health ministries are used to the type of information, still You need to work with WFR, the meteorological organizations. We need to play with a lot of stakeholders. And if we work in a way where there's no AI, imagine how hard it is for us to quantify the health impact of climate change. When I started to work on addressing climate change, they said that the health impact of climate change is malaria, and people say, come on, right? Like it's hot outside in Manila, they don't feel like it. But our climate change to these people say, unless you have a malaria or a mosquito monitoring system in your project, that's not climate change. Now Sarah showed one good slide. Because in a sense, all of the work that we've done in correlation sciences have allowed us now to see the impact of climate change in all these other aspects. Now we talk about heat actually becoming an impact, so that pollution is no longer a classical pollution story, but it's a way to actually see how climate change will affect pollution. And so that has now in a sense informed the way we're doing business in AEP. So what has happened? So because, Ed was said that the initial hoping is that climate change is the greatest public health threat. I haven't seen that actually, but the people use that as well. And so the trust now, so in a sense, the investment in climate change action in the health system has become part of what AEP is doing. So in the last in Baku, I think there was a commitment of all of the development banks to more money in climate change. We AEP committed $100 billion of financing. Of course, it will be represented by the development so in climate change by 2030. In our health lending, we're committed to mobilize, make sure that at least 50% would be for would be climate financing. And so we have to be a little bit creative. And so then, because the science that the correlation science actually told us that what needs to learn, we need to address the direct impact of climate change. We need to have adaptation and resilience. And of course, let's not forget the fact that health sector accounts for about 5 both studies would soon data. But 45% of carbon emissions coming from the health sector. And I always say that since people die from climate change, the health sector should be zero. It should be a net zero sector. So we are working to support a lot of this. So we're trying to facilitate because malaria, TB, and dengue, the number of telling us that they will start to reduce climate change. We're trying to see whether we could support more innovative solutions to address the societal and the climate malaria infectious tropical diseases. We're trying to work with our countries to see how we could fast track decarbonization. We know we need to decarbonize that sector. So there are solutions out there from improving urban systems, from making sure there's it's not just with the solar panels and hospitals. But there's a lot of background, there's a lot of historical like the green and safe hospital program, so there's a lot that needs to move forward. And so we really need to decarbonize the whole healthcare system. Disaster resilience in the health sector has always been stuff. So we just need to accelerate that to become more climate resilient. The health sector for me is probably the best sector that do very well systems. They just don't have it. But so if you start teaching them how to monitor heat, light, and all of that, the health sector will have to respond much better than other sectors. So we just need to revise whether we have or not to have this monitoring system. And so this is an actual work that we're doing right now. And the day, the way we always say is our main job is to help countries scale up things that they want to do. So we need to convince the countries. So we don't come in and tell the countries and lecture them and this or that. We need to make them buy in. And it's great that whenever we go to countries right now, they want to do it. Climate and health action is no longer something. It's something countries want to do. It just sometimes don't know how to implement it or what happens to it. I think this is where the more solutions we have available, the more we can show that it's not complicated, that we can get the data on board quite easily with the use of AI algorithms. And of course, I will leave it to Carlos to make sure that that's their job.
Thank you, Stodo. Yeah, interesting that you mentioned the emission from the health sector, and I'm sure a lot of us are aware that the emission from the sector. If you think the sector as a country is the 5th largest emitter in the world, so yeah, there's a lot of work there for the sector as well. And the upcoming COP, our colleague Leon from the Wellcome Trust just shared with us about the plan to have a lot of activities at the upcoming COP in Brazil. So let's work together to make sure that the health sector is up there together working with the climate communities. Now I turn the questions to the audience, and I can take two for now. It seems that like that table is very active with questions, and you know, yeah, can someone pass them the microphone, please?
Thank you for your great intros. I'm Gopal Ramcharan. I'm a professor of AI, and I'm still build AI systems, and I run a program called Responsible AI UK. I have a question for Carlos in particular, and also for others. You represent AWS. You talked about Facebook. You talked about Microsoft. What is AWS doing to reduce its carbon emissions in terms of, for example, communicating the data about the emissions that applications on AWS run to consumers? Is there a trade-off in doing that, in that you would stop your customers from actually using those services if they know how many tons of carbon they would emit? So that's one question, just to be fair to the other big tech companies that you mentioned. But what is AWS's plan around this issue, which is growing right now? And in terms of the, you talked about correlative systems, and I really liked your explanations of these AI-based systems. And we heard Sarah talk about lots of multimodal data sets and Felipe's points on causal reasoning or causality. Isn't there an issue here, and we see it in the UK with the report that came out from the Royal Society on Science in the Age of AI, an issue around scientific integrity and scientific rigor? When we are trying to throw a lot of data at AI systems, we tend to trust these systems a bit too much, maybe. And should we not be focusing on capacity building, training young scientists to actually do AI-based research better, so that the predictions, the forecasts you make of diseases are actually credible? We actually understand the causal relationships between the data sets and the actual effects of certain events in the real world. Because I feel there may be a gap here. Will result in us just adopting AI at scale, but not.
Thank you. I let our Carlos and our audience think a little, our speakers think a little bit about that, but I take the second question and then I come back to you for response. I saw another hand at that table. Do you still want to ask the questions? Yeah, can you just use the microphone, please?
So my question is the same as this gentleman to Mr. Carlos about how we can decrease the carbon emission in terms of we are producing electricity and steel and cement for the use of AI. So in order for us or any alternative way or methods that we can decrease the carbon emission from this operation. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's not on all colors because I think some other panelists may be able to take that as well. But let's start with you first, Carlos.
Okay, very well. I just want to clarify, I'm not here representing anybody. Yeah, and it's great that it's on Saturday, actually, right? Because then as Tuba mentioned, I am a member of the AI community. I hope that many of you are as well, or you join it and become involved in so many open source projects at the moment, such as DeepSeek, that has actually represented a massive improvement in the efficiency of those 800 gigabytes that I mentioned earlier. Actually, only about 20% are touched by any given inference. So that is why such is a massive contribution in science by these scientists in China. There's a lot of sour grapes, by the way, going on at the moment in LinkedIn about the fact that such a breakthrough came out of China despite the massive investments that are taking place in the United States. So I think this is a good encouragement for everybody to actually feel that that you don't need massive budgets and massive data centers in order to find mathematical techniques that improve the efficiency of the models. So I don't want to shirk the question. There is a lot of different lines of attack, if you will, that companies take. Google and Amazon, for instance, are investing in silicon chips that are optimized for neural networks. GPUs were built for graphics, so they actually come with an instruction set that is larger than you need strictly for neural networks. Therefore, you can actually make this more efficient. And there's other companies like Grok with a Q that is also working on these Cerebras. And Sarah, there's another company in the UK called GraphCore, I think. So there is quite a few companies that are working on the efficiency of the hardware as well as the software. So I hope that I helped to answer your question, at least partially. Regarding emissions, they went up last year for most big tech companies. In our case, for whatever reason, they were flat. But they are disclosed once per year. There are reports that come between May and July. Most big tech companies are providing those reports on an annual basis. They will be required in the European Union very soon, if not already. Depends on the size of the company. So most companies are doing some carbon accounting. Having said that, measuring Scope 3 emissions is super hard. Even for those companies that are working very actively. I mean, Google is very transparent, for instance. They have very good reporting. But even for them, it's really hard to measure the Scope 3 emissions.
Thanks, Carlos. I think there's an angle around capacity building. And I don't know, Sarah or Felipe, if you have any comment on that, or just any response to the energy and carbon situation, or any other speakers. Yes, Sarah? No?
Yeah, I think I take your point completely on the bit about capacity building, but maybe also taking a step back. I think what this is also exhibiting is a classic case of silos, right? And by which I mean that there is consensus in the scientific community, at least, that all AI is meant to augment human knowledge and not replace it. But that seems to be a case of silos, because whereas that is so clear within the community, maybe that doesn't come across so well outside to other sectors and so on. But there is that. Now, if you ask me, I'm going to say this is like at least a three-part problem. Whereas, at the risk of preaching to the choir, you need technology that is fit for use, has trust and acceptability and is appropriate. Then there are issues around governance and regulation, and capacity building and infrastructure. So I think of this as a three-part problem, and all of that is interconnected and none to be kind of ignored, or you can't progress without it. And also the bit about regulation, again, 10 years ago, I think it was, when the first call led by Stephen Hawking, who's no more, a group of 100 AI experts and scientists beyond AI called for regulation, AI regulation, and that was around that. And we see in more recent times, we've seen calls led by Elon Musk and others as well. Even last year, there's a lot of hype because of the latest release of LLMs and so on. So in some ways, we are at least a decade or half behind in terms of regulatory side of things. And that's just regulation. And then capacity building and all of that does go hand in hand together with that. I think, Tuba, you were also curious about what's happening in the regulatory space, and whether this is something that we should have an IPCC of AI.
No, it's a good segue into that questions. Unless any Dodo?
So I'm sorry, the AI people should not solve your carbon emissions by yourself, right? You should blame the energy people, where this is no, so there's a full clean energy movement that we're pushing. So for me, just because it needs more electricity doesn't mean it's not, we should not go for it. We should start blaming the utilities, whether or not it's in more, wind power availability as the one that my capabilities. So in a sense, so if there's not been advocacy, it's to accelerate more clean energy build-up in countries with AI. So I don't see just because it's using a lot of electricity that we should stop using the benefits of AI. Now the second point to talk about projections and all, I always say, okay, but AI can, even if the projections that AI will have derived is not yet perfect. What's the alternative? Current ones? It's probably worse. Right? So it's like I always see the ability to more parallel is much better. You just fix the problem as you move forward. So the alternative of what? More slow projections, more it's not as if you don't have the same errors in the current tools you're using right now. So rather than start saying let's just fix the problems of the with what we see with regulation, so clearly this needs, but this is where we need governments working together, a multilateral work. I think it's a challenge right now in the current setting that we're seeing this work. If we don't start trusting the multilateralization, that's a huge deal. Like evaluation. And you tell me if it's in the health side of AI, if there's something, it's WHO should be talking about this tomorrow. Well, yesterday. The UN should be talking about this. Because this is not something that's going to be driven by where the AI companies are. So this is the concern of the global community and the instruments that we have globally. Where countries talk to one another is the one that should step up. So if you say that this is where about 15 years behind the regulation, I think the one that dropped the ball would be those that have done the stuff already. This multilateral solutions.
Thank you. And this is, like I said, is a perfect segue into my next and last question for the panelists. And you only have 1 or 2 minutes, but depends, like it's not equally distributed. But this is a conversation that, as a climate scientist, I've been thinking about. For those who are familiar with the IPCC reports, our IPCC Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change, and that was established decades ago because there was a lack of scientific data and global agreement on the role of the problems, the risk, and the solutions. So we have this panel, and we have reports coming out and produced by hundreds of scientists across the world. Now, I feel like AI now is at a similar crossroads where, as you heard in the conference, there are risk, there are governance issues, transparency, accountability, equity, all these issues. Now, so I've been wondering if we need a similar platform like IPCC for AI. And I want to ask our speakers, there's no right or wrong response here, just your view, your thoughts on this, and whoever wants to go first.
I could maybe just, at the risk of hogging a bit too much space, just introduce one or two areas in the landscape and open it up to the rest of the panel. So in terms of regulation, I think the only clear regulation we see is that starting to come out of the European Union so far. The position in the UK has been slightly different in that it's more of a wait and see game. Partly that could be due to the fact that as with nuclear energy, for instance, has the technology reached steady state? Or is there a sense in the global community that we are still seeing the emergence of new and new AI day by day? So we don't quite know where the bar should be set and what are the connotations that regulation needs to cover. We were hearing just this morning at the plenary that just here in Thailand as well, that's sort of the approach that the Thailand ministry is taking as well, as to not to just rush in with some regulation, but just to kind of first learn and see how it pans out and then respond accordingly. But that's just a couple of the steps in the landscape. But I think, as most of the audience is probably aware, the UN has started to make some noises around regulation by adopting a resolution last year around AI regulation. That's just
and I mean, we heard this yesterday. Someone mentioned that the AI investment, obviously 95% of that come from private sector, and in the climate conversations, I mean, private sector joint now growing numbers of companies coming to all these COP meetings, but I didn't see a lot of them before. But this is a very different story, right? The landscape is dominated by private sector, and then we talk about this kind of intergovernmental panel. So on this side, any? Oh, okay, Carlos, and then Dodo.
Yeah, there's so many initiatives going around that, so there is a global partnership on AI that is modeled on IPCC. There is a secretariat that is actually hosted by OECD. There is an ethics of AI initiative by UNESCO. There's a series of safety summits that were actually started at Bletchley Park in the UK, near where Sarah lives. There's AI principles from the G20. There's a Hiroshima process on generative AI, sponsored by the G7, so take your pick. It's actually really confusing for anybody in, whether it's private or public sector, very difficult to actually get a sense of which way to go with regard to staying compliant. But I think I would like to just mention that we need to go beyond legislation. I think that we need to look at this as citizens, as parents. Probably the most important thing that we can do for our children is actually to teach them critical thinking, rather than fixate on whether we are actually complying with the law, is actually teaching them to use AI, to be aware that there are correlative methods being used to push information towards them. Is something that I would invite people to do. Turn off your Wi-Fi router at maybe 8 o'clock in the evening. Yeah, you would be amazed what you can do, how much fun it can be to actually be with members of the family without the distraction of correlation engines sending you feeds and videos and so on. And be aware that 99% of what we denominate AI is actually just powering what are known as recommendation engines. It's not computer vision. It's not even these chatbots. It's advertising. It is news. It is videos. That's where 99% more. Nobody has actually figures on this, but that is overwhelmingly where the electricity is going. Is to power these ranking and recommendation engines that feed. All of this junk that has actually a very bad effect on our children's mental health.
Thank you.
Let me ask a question whether IPCC, for me it's a question whether globally you should have a mechanism or discussion to discuss and look into a mechanism where countries are convening, as you said, the probably the AI I think that's yes. Right? AI is the tool for us. Just to leave it to, in a sense, to the use of data at a certain point, we might have to do that. The world will be that in a sense. It would be governed by, let's say, the private sector, for example, to dictate how things should be. They all want about the PMAC next year, we're talking about $8. So to have this, remember, it takes time, right? We know that these mechanisms, it takes time. IPCC will not come up with a stimulus. If we immediately want to have an answer, we probably will spend the next first 3 years just discussing how decisions will be made, what will be the instrument. But you need this global convening to start as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Because and hopefully then at a certain point, before hope took a long time before it actually reached a point now that it's actually talking about getting countries to commit to that. The initial talk, was just a nice holiday. So to wait for a time where the rules will be what's happening there very before in the private sector. It's pretty dangerous. I hear it makes me afraid. Because then in a sense, a lot of countries will be left behind. The incentives for them will be different.
Government. So if your question, whether it's called IPCC or some other nice acronym, there should be a convening of countries as soon as possible. Probably just to have a conversation on what is AI. It's not just health. We also have to emphasize its impact is not just so. And once we have that, then let's see if when during those meetings we realize, well, we just leave it to what it is, then you could always not have the meeting again. But that what you call IPCC type meeting should start soon, tomorrow.
Thank you, Felipe. And okay, maybe go to Noburu first, and then Felipe.
I think it's important to discuss, because people are kind of confused, so that it would be a good to have some kind of organization, ICPP, whatever, intergovernmental AI, whatever, But we need to make sure in a place, what is the most important things for the human beings, for us, value, as a scientist, I know this the AI, whatever, that is very useful for human health, Then maybe the most important thing concerns our health, for the most people, and you probably. And the mothers in Africa, they concerned about their kids, dying the malaria, So using AI, this kind of technology is very good. That's their value, But maybe someday the new technology catch up, make it this process more efficient, something, But since I spent the last couple of weeks in the jungles in Kenya, going back to the stories, I lost most of the time. I lost my signal from my mobile phones, Then I didn't have to use my computers, just enjoying the environment, Maybe for us, important to teach the kids, rather than playing on computers, something else like Carl said, more important things, So it might be good to discuss this kind of things, the place, maybe intergovernmental things. We need to create those kind of place to discuss what we need and what the most important things for us, I agree,
Yep. At the risk of being controversial, I would say no, we don't. Because the IPCC in itself is a rather imperfect model and it's a rather imperfect process. For example, it is mainly English spoken dominated. It does not account for traditional knowledge in any form or shape. Many traditional or indigenous groups are excluded from the whole process, even though there's lots to learn from, and there's lots of groups that have developed enough knowledge about climate impacts on health, or climate impacts in general, they are excluded from the process. And so it perpetuates power structures. Now, having said that, we can learn from that and move beyond the IPCC process and create something that is probably more meaningful. And so I think that, coming back to Carlos' point on critical thinking, I'd be more inclined to start by, well, first of all, trying to address the power structures that are completely dominant in the IPCC process and move towards that, and teach not only our kids but ourselves a bit more of critical thinking, because that is going to help us move forward in a direction that might be more meaningful.
Thank you. Agree. All of us, not just kids. Tuấn?
Yeah. So I have to say that I agree, and I want to say that let's think about us as a human being. So how many law, how many regulation, how many norms that's shaping our life every day, right? Uh, However, what is AI? AI was created by human. AI will be used by human, and the interpretation of data is on human. So let's think about that's actually that's the reason why don't we need to have regulation, right? And I have to say that's for our organization FHI, we need to go through a AI training, and you need to type the answer to before like completing the answer. That's responsibility, and I really think that's responsible is very important. The way that you use and how and when we use. And as an editor for one journal, I also realized that for each of the publisher now, they also have a statement of using AI for creating the manuscript. So that's also show that's important. I'm also a faculty for one adjunct faculty for one university, and in the assignment of students, they need also to declare whether they use AI or not, and if use, they use in what each purpose. So I think responsible use of AI is very important, and we need to regulate that. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank our. Let's have a round of applause to our speakers. And let's move to the second part of this. This is an emergency response challenge. So you are expected to work and put on your emergency response mode, which is quick. You have 15 minutes to complete this challenge. Can I have the slide on the screen, please? And we have 6 tables. I can see a lot of colleagues are standing at the back. Please join us. In the front there are a few more seats, but each of our speaker will join your table, so you can work with them and come up with a solution. So can I have that slide on the screen, please? The last one on the scenario challenge. So on the left-hand side, you have your scenario. This is an urban setting where densely populated coastal city experiencing record rainfall and rising sea level due to climate change. You have flooding in urban slums and causing cases of cholera, dengue fever, overwhelming the healthcare systems. Now compounding with the problem, you have, of course, the power outage, and then any efforts to coordinate relief efforts are difficult. Now, on the right-hand side, there is a few questions that you can use. You don't have to answer them. They're just there for guiding your thoughts. And each table can draw your expertise, discuss, and tell us one solution to address this challenge. And please talk to your speakers as your advisors at the table. And you have 15 minutes now. Can you please join our tables there? Please don't run away, because the challenge is just an opportunity for you to interact.
So I can join any table?
Yeah, just join any table. that city has a lot of problems. Sea level rise, disease, power outage. But you have AI and technologies. How are you going to respond to that? 50. Oh, yeah, you can. Oh, is there any speaker at this table yet? No. Because that one, no speaker? Dodo. Sarah, which table are you? You can sit next to David. Sarah. You already have Felipe, you have Carlos. Okay. We will resume in 1 minute. Please nominate a speaker from your table, and the speaker will have 1 minute to tell us your solution or what you've discussed at your table. Please get ready in 1 minute. Okay, I can see that everyone's still talking to each other, very interested in each other's opinion. Can we now pause our conversations? I'm looking at our speakers at the table. Everyone is asking lots of questions. I can see that. So can we pause our conversations now at the table? And I'm going to invite, I always go to the bottom of the room and I start from there. So these two tables, please get ready. One presenter from your table is going to tell us your solutions. And 1 minute. We have to resume the session now. We won't go back to the plenary. Thank you. Have you got your speaker yet? Yep. Okay, can I invite the table to my left? One of you will tell us a solution. Leslie, are you the one? No. Everyone is too happy to talk to each other. Sorry? One interesting walk-away message then, if it's not a solution. Okay, colleagues, can I have your attention to the back of the room here? Our speaker, our representative from table number 6 is going to give us the solution. Do you have the solution? Yes. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, our first solution problem solver.
Right. Okay. Hello everyone. My name is Nipitpon Tungkrak. You can call me Therm. I'm a second-year medical student at Ramativedi Hospital in Bangkok. Thank you. So first of all, we talk a lot about how we can use the AI and technology, but like we stick around because this scenario is quite a bit hard, because you see that all the electricity and the infrastructure all cut out, right? So at first we like have something we talk about. We just go have lunch, like we just go have fun on ourselves and wait for the help. But like that's the point, because they see that we see this scenario is like it's not maybe not a massive one. Not all the country that's robbed out. So it could be already the city or this only particular urban slums. So we can still get in and get out to bring help to in and bring the resource, so that we can restore the energy and restore the resource that we need to collect it. For example, like they say like the water here is go bad because of the flooding. So maybe we can find use the technology of the government to see the big picture of are there any other resource of water around them, so we can bring the good water to help the use of them, or something. And we can just go out and bring power bank, for example, like the easy one to restore our phone energy, so we can talk to others. For example, in the hospital, we can use telemedicine to call to the other doctors or the other areas and call for the help. So I feel like we just have to think out of the box a little bit and find help from the other side and get back. And I think one of the points that we mentioned is that AI should not become on the point where this scenario come. We should prevent them before. So like prevention and like see the before and act it faster and like use some like creativity a little bit when the thing comes. I think that will help and make the scenario become better.
Thank you. Thanks. Um, and I'm also a lecturer at Melbourne University, so this is a level of assignment I give my students. So, thank you. Prevention, and I think one of the questions there, number 4, is more on the kind of anticipation, mitigation, and prevention side of things. But let's move on. And remember, you have 1 minute because people are getting hungry. 1 minute for a speaker at this table.
Okay, so my name is Ming Yang. I'm the editor for the journal Nature Medicine, and I'll try and summarize what we've discussed on this topic. So we discussed quite a bit about what is the role of AI in terms of prediction, sort of capacity and early warning systems, and importantly, the importance of data, and especially in a setting like this, there is the issue of the lack of data. And so we discussed about the potential sources of data that could be used, especially in things like social media, Twitter. But the issues with data such as this is that there is like sort of reliability issues and the lack of access to the data. So, and we then also discussed about that what is the role of AI in the whole of the entire response to climate, to the sort of the climate disaster that is in this case, and that we should really look at it in a more multi-sectoral level, and that AI and early warning systems is only one aspect of this multi-sectoral response, and also consider other sectoral aspects like housing interventions to community-based interventions, and really so crossing the sectors of communities working with the government and at a local and national level, to make sure that any of these responses are sustainable in the long term.
Thank you. So we have anticipation, prevention, multi-sectoral collaborations. Okay, now let's move to the table over here. 1 minute for your representative. Who is this person? Okay, other tables, can you nominate your speakers now? Okay, there you go.
Okay, I'm Maria Trakowska. I am the editor of the Bulletin of the World Health Organization, and I'm going to try to make a summary of what we talked about here that was not talked about on the other tables. We first discussed leadership roles and governance to actually be able to implement this, that it's important that that's in place. And then the conversation went to preparedness, because if you're not prepared, it's really hard to implement these technologies. And this is an urban slum, so low resource. So it's going to be really hard to use a lot of technologies if you haven't thought about how to use them before. And also, we also use ChatGPT to answer the questions, but it's a little bit self-advertorial. So
thank you. So we look at the whole spectrum of disaster risk reduction here, like prevention, preparedness, multi-sectoral collaborations. Let's move to this table. Do we have a speaker? Oh, you've lost your members. Okay.
My name is Ridwan. I'm working with UNICEF, so I'm try to summarize the discussion. I think majority are almost similar. I think the contributor of AI is supposed to be more on predictability. and prevention rather than the response itself. I think that's probably we're trying to discuss. For example, better forecasting, better predictability in terms of disease outbreak, because that's how technology can be used. But of course, we also get challenges in terms of availability of data, quality of data, which can contribute to those development of tools. And I think colleagues from Nepal also say that it is important to also build capacity for leadership in the government to be able to use that tools. But again, I think there are also policy, there are also something that is very disconnect between leaderships and evidence at the moment with this world-changing politics. I think that's also one thing we also notified, that it should be something really happening. Oh, thank you.
Thank you. So far, 4 tables, and none of you talk anything about AI or technology, right? We all have leadership, governance, capacity. Yeah, so let's hear from this table.
Hi, there's going to be 2 of us presenting. So I'm Nacha Saya. I'm from IFMSA Thailand.
And I'm Nishnipa Tawanvusit. I'm from IFMSA Thailand too.
So our discussion was mostly, well, not tackling the question, but discussing on what can we do to implement in this situation. So mainly we can be split into 2 parts of the discussion, a pre-event and during the event. So pre-event, we focused on like anticipating the environment changing and things like that. So anticipating could be utilizing AI during these stages to maybe predict messages that can be sent out during events, such as if there's a lot of health risks in previously, we can find correlations on that, and we can focus on that areas to focus the message on keeping everyone safe. And we could also, before that, we could also establish a social and community network in order to like collaborate early on, so that in case of an event happening, we could act fast. Yeah.
Add on to that, the predictions, we can actually look at the climate change and we can predict the event, like the speaker said that for the malaria, we can also predict that the malaria outbreaks can be happened depending on the rainfalls predictions, and we can do the resource allocations for that. And after that, during the events, we can do the decentralization system. So the communities, like for the locals, they can depend on themselves, like they can create resources like electricity by themselves in order to cope with the situations and can communicate inside the locals. And other than that, we can do the radio communication. So in case of the emergencies that the electricity goes out, like all of it, we can do the radio communications and uses the AI to reducing the delays between the communications. And also we can collaborate with the local sectors, like centers, like hospitals or schools that can communicate with the central governance of the city or the countries, so that we can share the information or news about what's happening and how to cope with the situations for the health systems and like hygienes of the people.
Also, I forgot to mention about anticipating. Also, we also talked about establishing climate resilient infrastructures, like in the case of a hospital, as you have said. Sorry. We're trying to create like a more balanced kind of community where we are able to pull electricity or energy sources from the infrastructures already. Like in flooding, for example, we create the power generators. We may have to lift them up into high grounds to combat that. So that means that we
So please stick to 1 minute so we can do the conclusion quickly.
1 minute, 10 seconds is basically pretty much about the same as other tables. We did try something like we capture the picture, throw to the AI, having them answer all the 6 questions. They have a long question, and we have them concise in 1 paragraph, very concise. It includes everything you guys said and more. You can try it yourself for that. I think our discussion add on what you were talking, maybe 2 points. First of all, you can focus a bit more on simulation before it happens. We can utilize AI much more that way, and including interaction with people who use AI, emergency responder and things like that, and also how people can use AI in their emergency situation like this. And secondly, perhaps we were talking about downstream problem when climate-driven health health crisis happen in urban setting, right? How about going back to the big picture that the panelists started? How could we develop and use AI in a way that not create carbon footprint, energy and water consumption to the point that flooding going to be happen someday somewhere? And for that, maybe we have to work both ways. How to use AI that not going to create climate crisis, and how could we use AI to help address our climate crisis as well? Thanks.
Thanks, everyone. Great work, and really appreciate your inputs from each table. Can the IT team have the QR code on the screen, please? So before you go, if you could scan that, and please give us an assessment of today's session. Much appreciated. And I'm not going to conclude with any big speech because there'll be a summary of all our sessions tomorrow by our colleague YY from NUS tomorrow morning, so stay on. But I would just like to say thanks to first our audience and our partners from the Asian Development Bank, from the Wellcome Trust, from my colleague friend Carlos, and JICA, our colleague from JICA, of course our FHI colleagues here as well, and Sarah, from University of Oxford. But much appreciate also your participation, and great to see all of you here. I hope to see you more in the next, this afternoon and tomorrow. Did I miss anything? Any other final points? Oh, thank you. Thanks, and please go down and enjoy lunch and continue your conversations.